discovered. How one amazing woman turned a millionaire CEO's world upside down in just 30 days. Jessica took a deep breath as she stood outside the conference room, the familiar mix of anxiety and determination threading through her veins. Today mattered. This was her moment to shine, or to watch everything she worked for slip away yet again. The clip of heels echoed in her ears, a reminder of the ticking clock marking her precarious standing at the startup. The walls seemed to close in, a gentle reminder of the pressures she faced at home, where 8-year-old Max awaited the bedtime stories only she could tell. As the door swung open, she felt the weight of the executives' gazes, and especially Blake Harrington's. The polished millionaire who emanated a film of charm cloaked a ruthless drive for profit that often left employees like her scrambling in his wake. She clenched her notes tighter, whispering to herself that this was about more than just a presentation. This was about her value in a world that too often relegated mothers like her to mere footnotes. Inside the boardroom, she was met with skepticism masked as intrigue. "So, Jessica, what have you got for us?" Blake's voice dripped with a false sense of curiosity, but his eyes glinted with superiority. She steeled herself. Opening her file, she launched into the innovative proposal that had kept her up at night. Each slide depicted a future that could elevate the company, if only they were willing to take the leap. Yet the further she progressed, the more she sensed the undercurrent. Blake leaned back, arms crossed, ready for the fight. "Interesting, but it's a departure from what we typically pursue," he interjected, his tone casual yet oppressive. The tension in the room thickened with each word, colleagues shifting uncomfortably as if sensing the brewing storm. Would they choose tradition over innovation? Jessica's stomach tightened when she caught the disbelief on Blake's face. A flicker of contempt as if she were an intern presenting a school project. Her breath caught at the thought of Max, at home with cereal-stained pajamas, waiting for a superhero mom to return. The sacrifices she made echoed in her mind, a reminder that this wasn't merely ambition, this was survival. A chance at stability, respect. Before she could gather herself, Blake unleashed sculpted barbs, undermining her credibility with brutal precision. "Look, Jessica, it's cute that you think your plan could work, but our investors expect a return." A silence followed, heavy with mutual apprehension, and self-doubt crept in like an unwanted intruder. She felt every eye shift to her, the weight unbearable. What if they agreed with him? The familiar pangs of inadequacy clawed at her resolve. Before she could respond, she took a deep breath, the pressure in her chest imbued with steely determination. "Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue." Blake smirked as if she had just unwittingly handed him an ace. But the completeness of the board's attention ignited something in her. A memory surfaced, the legacy of the company's founding driven by values she had once shared. She hadn't just stumbled on a project. She had uncovered a truth buried under ambition and greed. "You may be right about investor returns, Blake," she challenged, heart racing but steady. "But what if our identity has been misplaced? What if we're not just another tech company?" The room crackled with energy. As the faces turned, drawn to her newfound strength, the fear shifted to defiance. The question loomed, could integrity triumph where privilege prevailed? As the weight of anticipation thickened in the air, Jessica's resolve solidified. The stakes had never been higher, but she wasn't just seeking recognition anymore. She was fighting for all the unacknowledged warriors in the corporate trenches, desperate for a voice. Blake's flustered expression only fueled her momentum, igniting doubts within her that exploded into unshakable courage. The fight for her place, her son's future, had just begun. The atmosphere shifted palpably as Jessica's words resonated, echoing off the glass walls of the conference room. She felt the electrifying buzz of possibility surge through her, her heart racing with the strength of her resolve. The executives appeared momentarily captivated, some exchanging knowing glances as if her challenge had ignited a flicker of hope long buried under the weight of convention. But Blake was not easily swayed. His expression hardened and his brows furrowed into a calculated frown. "So, you suggest we abandon everything our investors expect for what exactly? A social conscience?" His voice dripped with sarcasm, but the uncertainty that grazed his otherwise confident facade only bolstered her conviction. Jessica held her ground, forcing herself to remain calm. "It's not about abandoning our investors, Blake. It's about offering them something of greater value, an authentic mission that speaks to our consumers. People today crave brands that connect with them emotionally. If we can be that brand, our financial returns will follow." The room's tension had morphed into a battlefield, one where her innovative mindset clashed with the rigid traditions of corporate life. Each word she spoke felt less like a presentation and more like a rallying cry. "I believe our company can be the new voice. We can lead the industry in both profit and principles." She could see doubt creep into the eyes of her colleagues. They had been shackled to the familiar, their visions dimmed by a lack of boldness. Jessica's heart pounded in her chest, the stakes now personal. She envisioned herself at the kitchen table with Max, their struggles reflected in his innocent eyes. No more small dreams, she told herself. Aim higher. This is the chance to change everything. Bold claims, Jessica, but perhaps you're not entirely aware of the consequences, Blake retorted, his tone a measured blend of menace and doubt. The other executives maintained a tense stillness. She could feel them caught in a limbo between hesitation and support, and Blake's resolute denial pulled them back toward safety. "I understand the risks," Jessica urged, the fire in her voice igniting into a crescendo of passion. "But you have to recognize that fear of change holds us back. We're too accustomed to the limitations we have placed on ourselves. We're defining success through outdated metrics. It's time we align profit with purpose." Wordlessly, she observed the shifting expressions around the table. The iceberg of reluctance was beginning to crack, just enough for a glimmer of light to peek through. Jessica took a deep breath, channeling everything she had into her concluding statement. "Imagine the impact we could have, not only economically but socially. We can redefine what it means to invest in a company. Isn't that a legacy worth pursuing?" The silence that followed her proclamation felt both suffocating and liberating. Blake leaned forward, contesting her challenge with renewed scrutiny. "Fine. Let's say your vision is selling. What's your plan if we choose to anticipate only what the market says rather than what it needs?" Jessica's stomach tightened once more, but she sensed a flicker of opportunity, a chance to display her resilience and sharp intellect. She had been waiting for an opening like this, one she could capitalize on. "Let's establish a pilot program to gather consumer insights, allowing us to adjust our approach. We can create a prototype of our intended campaign and test consumer responses before any full-blown launch." As the executives pondered her suggestion, Jessica felt a surge of energy propelling her forward. This wasn't solely about business. It was about forging a new path, for herself, her son, and every underappreciated parent fighting against the tide. She was done waiting for permission. This was her chance to dictate her own narrative. Blake's gaze bore into her, keen and calculating. "All right, let's say I'm intrigued. The next move, Jessica, rests with you. But if you fail—" He paused, heightening the weight of his warning. "The consequences will be dire." "Then I'll make sure I don't fail," she replied, voice steady and unyielding. As she stood there, the moment transformed. She was no longer just seeking acceptance, but preparing to rewrite the rules of her existence. Outside, the sun dipped low in the sky, casting shadows across the polished floor. Tonight she would go home with a plan, an ambitious plan. But even as she felt the energy coursing through her, one question lingered in her mind. Was she ready to confront the monumental challenges ahead, or would she falter under the pressure of turning this vision into reality? It was a reality she hadn't yet envisioned, but it was approaching fast and required action. It was time to face the others, the ones who believed little in her dreams and much in Blake's dominance. Would they support her plan, or would she have to take on this battle alone? The outcome was uncertain, But one thing was clear. Change was on the horizon, and she was at the epicenter. Jessica marched through the office's glass doors, her heart beating in rhythm with her determined thoughts. Each step felt laden with purpose as she maneuvered between the desks, passing colleagues who cast cautious glances her way. Their whispers, laced with skepticism, hinted at doubt about her audacious ambition. But instead of withering under their scrutiny, she internalized their energy, transforming it into fuel for her resolve. In her mind, the conference room confrontation replayed like a film. Each word, every gaze exchange sparked a pulse of adrenaline. Blake's condescending smirk and dismissive tone had lit a fire within her, and she was determined to prove him, and anyone else who underestimated her, wrong. She needed to rally support for her plan, to ensure that the pilot program idea didn't stumble before it even had a chance to take flight. Jessica entered her office and closed the door behind her, seeking solitude. The walls were adorned with motivational quotes and industry awards, a reminder of her past successes and the drive that propelled her forward. She allowed herself a moment of reflection, contemplating the journey that had led her to this pivotal moment. The challenges of balancing motherhood with her career had honed her tenacity. And now, that very grit would be her greatest asset. She grabbed a notepad, the crisp pages signaling a blank slate, a canvas for her ideas. Brainstorming, she began jotting down strategies for the feasibility study, focusing on consumer engagement. What if they led focus groups, conducted interviews, engaged potential clients through social media polls? Each thought sparked a wave of creativity, allowing her to envision not just a pilot program, but a movement that could redefine their brand. As she scribbled, she recalled the cafeteria interactions with coworkers, admiring their respect for her work ethic. Whether it was directly or through casual conversations, many had already voiced some support for her vision. That connection could be the linchpin she needed. She resolved to organize a brainstorming session, inviting those open to her approach, building influence from the ground up rather than waiting for senior leadership's approval. With the framework of her ideas in place, Jessica stepped into action mode. She approached the more supportive colleagues, gauging their reactions and refining her pitch. "I need your insight to help craft a strategy that speaks to our consumers, one that merges our goals with their evolving needs," she asserted. Her tone balanced between authority and collaboration. The collaborative spirit stirred enthusiasm among her peers. She could see their eyes light up with the promise of something substantial. Each conversation dispelled some of the weight pressing on her shoulders. With every positive nod, she felt her resolve strengthen. No longer was it just about convincing the executives. It was about embodying change, nurturing it from within. The tentative excitement that had bubbled in the conference room began to manifest into palpable energy within her team. They began generating ideas, transforming theoretical discussions into actionable items. This ripple effect of belief was intoxicating, fueling her dreams. But as the meeting day approached, doubt began to creep back in. What if Blake's influence thwarted her plans? What if her teammates, eager as they were, couldn't withstand the tug-of-war of corporate politics? The urgency of those thoughts made her pulse quicken. Pushing past the fear, she steeled herself. She had set her course, and nothing, not even internal hurdles, would deter her from pursuing her mission. The night before the meeting, Jessica lay awake in bed, weighing her options and mentally rehearsing her speech. Doubts tugged at her mind. Would she falter when the spotlight turned on her? Could she respond effectively if challenged again? Yet her thoughts turned to Max, who was counting on her to chase a better life. He was her true compass. Her dreams would not only change her trajectory, but could also pave a way for him. Jessica clenched her fists, readying herself for the day ahead. The moment of reckoning had arrived. She had chosen this journey, and now it was time to see if she could truly stand her ground. As she closed her eyes, she resolved, "Tomorrow I will not just present a plan, I will inspire confidence." The stakes were higher than ever, and the pressure of turning her vision into reality loomed large. She understood that success rested on a knife's edge, and the looming meeting would either validate her resolve or shatter her dreams. Tomorrow was more than just another day. It was a decisive moment that could either catapult her toward transformation or leave her grappling with defeat. Would she be able to steer the narrative in her favor? The answer felt as close as the air she breathed, charged with possibility. Jessica's eyes fluttered open to the gray light filtering through the blinds. The weight on her chest mirrored the burden of her past decisions. Today wasn't merely another day. It was her moment to disrupt the status quo. A chance to redefine not just her career but potentially the entire company's trajectory. She felt the dread creep in again, whispering doubts, but she pushed it aside. Max needed her to seize this opportunity. As she dressed, the moments of vulnerability stirred within her, each button of her blouse fastening like her changing resolve. She wasn't just preparing for a presentation, she was gearing up for a confrontation with the entrenched norms that had held her, and others, back for far too long. Arriving at the office, she noted the flickering lights and the hum of conversation around her. Some colleagues looked up, their faces a blend of curiosity and concern. Jessica took a deep breath, anchoring her confidence. She reminded herself of her team's enthusiasm, how their belief in the plan had rekindled her own determination. At her desk, the agenda for the meeting waited like a sharpened blade on the table. As she reviewed her notes, Jessica noticed her hands shook slightly. The familiar sting of uncertainty pricked her, but she recollected every encouraging nod and shared idea, reinvigorating her faith in their project. They weren't just her co-workers. They were allies in a struggle for progress. When the meeting finally commenced, she stood at the head of the table, scanning the array of faces. Blake leaned back with crossed arms, a self-satisfied smirk permanently etched on his features. The moment felt heavy, thick with expectation, and Jessica summoned all her strength to initiate the dialogue. Thank you all for being here today. I'm excited to share our vision for the pilot program, one that aims to connect more deeply with our consumers and rejuvenate our brand, she began, her voice steady yet strong. She unfolded her ideas methodically, each point laced with the passion driving her. As the room began to engage, a comfort enveloped her. She revealed insights gathered from focus groups and consumer feedback, showcasing how her proposal wasn't just a theory, but rooted in real data. The visuals on the screen painted a compelling narrative, capturing their attention. Her colleagues leaned forward, sipping their coffee, eyes bright with the prospect of a new direction. Yet as Jessica made her case, Blake interjected with skepticism, his words laced with condescension. That sounds nice, Jessica, but do you really believe mid-level employees can spearhead a shift in our corporate strategy? Let's be realistic here. His challenge pierced through her momentum, a stark reminder of the uphill battle ahead. The room went quiet, tension mounting. Jessica felt the flicker of doubt threaten to extinguish her resolve, but then she thought of her initial motivation, the promise of a better future for Max and every other hardworking employee who believed in her vision. She needed to stand firm. With all due respect, Blake, change often comes from those who recognize the industry's evolving landscape best. We have the potential to bridge the gap between our current offerings and consumer expectations. I'm asking for an opportunity to prove that. A silence hung in the air, and Jessica could feel the mounting pressure as every eye turned toward Blake, who now seemed caught off guard by her defiance. The atmosphere shifted. Jessica could sense a collective tension dissipating, replaced by intrigue. Would Blake retaliate? Suddenly Sandra, a supportive colleague, chimed in. I think Jessica's onto something. We've seen a shift in how consumers want to be treated, and aligning our strategy with those expectations could really set us apart. In that moment, a subtle wave of camaraderie washed over the group. Jessica seized the opportunity, bolstered by Sandra's words. Despite Blake's looming presence, the tide was turning. Jessica felt a swell of courage rise within her, ready to rally her team, but amid the budding belief, she realized that the path forward was fraught with obstacles. Blake's influence didn't just evaporate, and it was clear that this confrontation was merely the beginning. As the discussion deepened, she could feel the stakes heightening, and doubt clawed at her once more. Would her team hold strong against Blake's pressure? Would they truly be able to help shift the corporate narrative in her favor? Jessica knew she needed to tighten her grip on her purpose. This wasn't only a presentation, it was a launch pad, and with every word spoken, she gathered momentum. The moment for growth had arrived, but it demanded a courage she hadn't fully grasped until now. The takeoff was thrilling yet terrifying, and inwardly she questioned how far she could push against the corporate tide. This was a battle not only for her career but for a collective chance to rewrite the story they shared. Would she emerge as a catalyst for change, or would the shadows of doubt snuff out this spark before it ignited? The answer loomed just out of reach, a tantalizing possibility waiting to be unfurled. The meeting room buzzed with a nervous energy as Jessica navigated the lingering tension. Blake's earlier words echoed in her mind, taunting her resolve. She clenched her fists beneath the table, forcing herself to focus on the matter at hand. Momentum had shifted, but uncertainty still loomed large. During the discussion, she turned her attention to her colleagues, particularly to Sandra, who had offered support. "Let's explore what we can do differently," Jessica proposed, her voice firm as she imagined the synergy her proposal could ignite. "How can we initiate a customer feedback loop that not only enhances engagement, but provides real-time insights into market evolution?" Several heads nodded in agreement. Jessica felt a flicker of hope surge within her. The realization dawned that her vision was not solely hers. It was woven with the aspirations of everyone in that room. They all wanted a more dynamic and responsive company. As conversations flowed around her, Jessica realized that the vision she had crafted relied not just on her capabilities, but on the collaboration and ideas of her team. This was a deeper revelation. Her strength did not lie in being a lone warrior, but in being a catalyst for collective ingenuity. She highlighted further ideas, recommending allocating roles to utilize each person's unique skills to address specific challenges laid out by consumer insights. The atmosphere began to transform, shifting from skepticism to enthusiasm. Jessica took the time to facilitate discussions, ensuring everyone had a voice. This wasn't merely a top-down initiative. It was a tapestry woven from diverse experiences and talents. Twice she glanced at Blake, anticipating his rebuttal, but he remained silent, arms now uncrossed, perhaps caught off kilter by the unexpected unification in the room. Jessica took a deep breath, invigorated by the changes radiating from her colleagues. The visual presentations on the screen transitioned into something more than figures. They became promises of innovation and growth, a collective journey waiting to be embarked upon. Then Blake broke his silence. "Let's not get ahead of ourselves. You're proposing a lot of change, and in times like these it's risky." His tone was sharper now, almost desperate, and Jessica felt her heart race. "Risk is part of growth, Blake, but without it we stagnate," she countered, maintaining a professional demeanor while feeling the heat of his challenge. Each syllable lingered with the weight of conviction, a realization that she must assert her belief in the team's potential and their shared capability for transformation. The room fell momentarily quiet, absorbing her words. Blake exhaled sharply but didn't push back further, a subtle sign of surrender. Jessica recognized this was not just a challenge but a defining moment for both her and her colleagues. Would they dare to take ownership of their roles in forging this path forward? "Let's prototype our plan this week. We can implement some pilot feedback sessions and assess consumer interactions firsthand," Jessica suggested. "Those insights will empower us to pivot quickly if necessary." This wasn't merely a gesture. It was a strategic decision that invited her team into the narrative, forging their buy-in and ownership. With renewed energy, her colleagues quickly began brainstorming logistics. Jessica exchanged thoughtful glances with Sandra, who beamed back at her, a silent acknowledgement that their belief in the project was palpable and contagious. But beneath this optimism, another layer of tension simmered in her gut. Could she maintain this momentum? Could she really push against the corporate inertia embodied by Blake's authority? The journey ahead felt exhilarating yet daunting. As the meeting wrapped up, Jessica felt the late afternoon warmth on her face as she stepped out. There was work to be done, and Blake's influence loomed larger than ever. This confrontation, while a small victory, only signaled the beginning of her true test. The stakes were higher now, and the impending decisions weighed heavily. Could she sustain this newfound alliance and leverage their unified vision to turn the tides completely? Jessica's mind raced with strategies as she walked toward her office, the sound of footsteps echoing her uncertainty. She had ignited a spark within her team, but would they be able to withstand the inevitable backlash from Blake's network? The time had come to turn ambition into action. As Jessica sat back at her desk, a flicker of resolve sparked within her. She was not just imagining change, she was shaping it. But as she drafted her notes, an unsettling thought crept in. Was she truly ready for the conflict that lay ahead with Blake and his established allies? The inner battle was beginning. The next move was hers to make. Days turned into a flurry of activity after that pivotal meeting. Jessica found herself at the forefront of a movement within the company, a force for change that she had only just begun to grasp. Early mornings blurred into late nights, her schedule packed with brainstorming sessions and strategy meetings. Each conversation she held tightened the knot of confidence in her gut, yet the specter of Blake lingered like a shadow. Her first task involved organizing the customer feedback pilot. Jessica meticulously crafted a survey designed to tap into the psyche of their users, confident that if she could gather meaningful data, she could further persuade the team of their need for transformation. The initial responses trickled in, ranging from enthusiastic endorsements to a few scathing critiques. Rather than deter her, these responses fueled her determination. Understanding both the applause and harsh criticism would furnish the information she needed to shape future strategies. In the midst of this rush, the simmering tension with Blake escalated. He began to push back more openly during executive rounds, challenging her proposals at every turn. "You're creating chaos with this feedback network," he would say, his voice booming across the boardroom. "Our clients don't need more opinions, they need stability. People value what's familiar." Each time he stepped in, Jessica felt a flicker of doubt. Could he be right? Were they risking too much with potentially volatile strategies? Yet her allies like Sandra had risen to the occasion, offering counter-arguments and showing palpable enthusiasm for Jessica's proposals. Their collective conviction chipped away at her uncertainty, and she started presenting her findings more assertively. In one of their sessions, she proposed an in-depth analysis of consumer behaviors spurred by the feedback received. "Imagine harnessing this data to launch a marketing campaign that resonates deeply with our audience," she iterated, her voice steady. "We can target their needs in real time and potentially reshape our brand identity." "It's bold," Sandra remarked, excitement lighting her eyes. "But I think we could pull it off." This camaraderie became crucial, allowing Jessica to shift her perspective. As she visualized her role not just as a visionary but as a leader fostering collaboration, she recognized the necessity for her team to rise alongside her. The feedback was as much about empowering others as it was about collecting data. Despite the enhanced teamwork, Blake's critiques grew sharper, now bordering on personal. "I doubt your capacity to handle this," he said to her privately, after a particularly heated meeting. "You might be in over your head." It hurt, but beneath the pain, she also felt a surge of determination. Each barb he launched reinforced the realization that she had to step up not only for herself, but for her team who looked to her for guidance. An unexpected confrontation jolted her fresh resolve. During a casual encounter in the elevator, Blake's dismissiveness caught her off guard. "You're just a cog, Jessica. Don't forget that," he sneered, a calculated attempt to undermine her growing influence. The elevator doors closed with a thud behind him, and Jessica felt something shift within her. She could either retreat into self-doubt or embrace this moment as a rallying cry. The next day she outlined a comprehensive strategy for the upcoming company-wide meeting, prepared to showcase their pilot results and the vast potential of data-driven customer engagement. This wasn't just about presenting her work. It was a chance to galvanize her allies and shatter the shackles Blake sought to impose. Standing at her desk, Jessica could almost hear the beat of revolution building, a crescendo of voices ready to challenge the old guard. But as she practiced her presentation in front of the mirror, the knot in her stomach twisted tighter. The stakes felt impossibly high. Would this meeting mark her ascension or unfolding chaos? As her resolve tightened, Jessica knew one thing for certain. The time had come not just to deliver a presentation, but to dismantle the skepticism surrounding her. With every lasting decision, she aimed to carve a new identity for both herself and the company. Yet with the looming confrontation at the meeting, another unsettling thought reverberated through her mind. What if Blake had something more insidious planned for her? The soft click of her office door echoed her uncertainty as she simply stared into the reflection surrounding her, a vision yet to be shaped. The day of the company-wide meeting arrived with an air of expectancy that enveloped Jessica. She entered the conference room, her heart pounding as she surveyed the assembly of executives, her allies mixed in with skeptics. The long mahogany table served as a battleground, and she was ready for the fight ahead. Dressed in a tailored suit that accentuated her newfound confidence, she reminded herself that every eyebrow furrowed in doubt only sharpened her resolve. As she stood before her colleagues, the ambient hum of chatter quieted. Sliding her presentation onto the screen, she felt the weight of every critical gaze upon her. Today, we're redefining our engagement strategy, she began, her voice steady. The feedback from customers was more than just data, it was a story waiting to be told. She navigated through her slides, weaving statistics with relatable narratives that brought the numbers to life. Engaging visuals illustrated stark contrasts between traditional approaches and potential outcomes of the feedback-driven strategies she proposed. She watched as some expressions shifted, curiosity replacing skepticism. When she unveiled the marketing campaign rooted in consumer feedback, a palpable energy crackled in the room. This campaign isn't merely reactive. It positions us as pioneers in our field, she asserted, feeling the merging of her passion with purpose. Then came the inevitable interruption. Blake leaned forward, arms crossed defiantly, his brow arched. This is dangerously ambitious, Jessica. Our clients rely on us to provide stability, not to experiment with their preferences. The steely timbre in his voice sliced through the room. For a moment, doubt fluttered in her chest, but as she met his gaze, something shifted. But what he didn't know about himself, she mused internally, was that the tide was turning. Instead of acquiescing, Jessica held his gaze. Respectfully, Blake, she replied, keeping her tone measured but firm. Our clients value innovation as much as they do stability. The industry shifts, and if we don't adapt, we risk being left behind. There was a collective intake of breath. An uncomfortable silence settled. Had she crossed a threshold? Unfazed, Jessica pressed on with renewed fervor. The data shows our customers crave connection. They want to be heard, and tailoring our approach to their voices could fortify our brand in ways we never imagined. Each word felt like a small victory, reclaiming space he had intended to control. With her slides presenting empirical data to back her claims, Jessica invited Sandra to elaborate on how the pilot had already achieved synergy with existing marketing initiatives. Together, they offered compelling anecdotes, showcasing positive feedback from customers who had felt genuinely engaged with the company. As they concluded, applause erupted from the supportive ranks. But Blake remained stoic, his silence a festering challenge. Let's stick to our proven strategies, he countered, desperation creeping in. This is not the time to gamble. Jessica sensed the drift in dynamic. The boardroom was no longer divided, it was ready for change. She was standing on the precipice of transformation, her voice rising in intensity. Stability is essential, Jessica conceded, but it should never serve as a shield against growth. We have a choice to remain stagnant or strive for excellence. The debate stretched on, voices amalgamating and intertwining, revealing deeper divisions within the room. Allies rallied around Jessica, amplifying her message while they countered Blake's antiquated views. This was her moment. She was no longer just fighting for herself, but for a collective vision. As the meeting drew to a close, tension hung palpably in the air. The executives murmured amongst themselves, their contemplation a signal of potential change. Jessica stepped back, heart racing, aware of the formidable challenge ahead. Although she had made substantial progress, the battle was not yet won. Blake's dark eyes narrowed across the room, a silent promise of retaliation. As she gathered her materials, an unsettling realization washed over her. Winning this skirmish was only the first step. What came next? Would Blake escalate his personal attacks? Or worse, would he resort to undermining her through the very people who had rallied around her cause? The door to uncertainty swung wide, and Jessica once again felt the weight of her ambition press against her chest. She would not back down. The immediate future held countless challenges, but one thing was certain. She was prepared to face whatever lay ahead. When the dust settled, Jessica understood that this was more than business. It was a crucible through which her professional essence would be forged anew. As she left the room, her mind raced with plans for the next phase. The clock was ticking, and she had no intention of giving Blake the upper hand. Behind her, the whispers of change echoed, and the threat of a new struggle loomed. Every beginning held the seed of conflict, and Jessica knew she needed to execute her strategies with both tenacity and finesse. What would be her next move? The battle had only just begun. As Jessica stepped out of the conference room, the applause still echoed faintly in her ears, a stark contrast to the tension swirling within her. She clutched her binder tightly, as if it were a life raft in a stormy sea. Each footstep felt heavier than the last, the weight of her victory mingling uneasily with the uncertainty that loomed ahead. Back at her desk, she sat down and took a deep breath. Was this real? Had she really just stood her ground against Blake? The thrill of that moment coiled tightly in her chest, fueling her ambition. Yet she couldn't ignore the gnawing sensation that this was merely the opening act in a much larger play. Blake wouldn't stay silent. He was a strategist, and the pulse of the company now dictated that he would strategize against her. Opening her laptop, Jessica explored the data they had gathered on consumer engagement. The numbers were promising, and she needed to dig deeper. This wasn't just about the campaign, it was about establishing a new framework for the company. Customers wanted more than just products. They wanted connection, experience, a relationship. They needed to feel that their voices mattered. If she could solidify this understanding across the departments, her vision might weather Blake's counterattacks. Midway through her analysis, a knock at the door shattered her concentration. It was Sandra, her champion from the meeting. "Hey, can we chat?" she asked, her eyes bright with enthusiasm. Jessica nodded, motioning for her to sit. "What a remarkable presentation. I've never seen the room so engaged," Sandra said. The genuine excitement in her voice was infectious. "But what's next? Blake's already scheming. He won't let this slide easily." Jessica leaned back, her mind racing. "I need to solidify this momentum. If I can show how customer engagement aligns with our financial goals, I might just win over the doubters and silence the critics." Sandra nodded slowly, absorbing the gravity of Jessica's words. "You need to gather more voices. Reach out to those in marketing, product development, gather their insights, show them how this isn't just your battle but the company's." "Exactly," Jessica replied, her excitement growing. "If I create a task force that includes representatives from all major departments, it'll not only amplify our strategy, but also deflect Blake's criticism as a group initiative. Together, we'll be stronger." "Brilliant idea," Sandra encouraged. "But do you think Blake will allow you to operate outside his oversight? He might try to frame it as a threat to his authority." Jessica's expression hardened. "Let him try. This is a crucial moment, and I won't let Blake's tactics derail our progress. I'll sit down with him and advocate for the task force. It's a bold move, but it's necessary." Just then the door opened again. This time it was David from finance, an unexpected ally. "I overheard some of what you two are discussing, and I'm interested in joining this task force. The numbers back up your vision, Jessica. I think we could make a real impact if everyone worked together." Jessica's heart soared. With every expression of support, her conviction solidified. "Yes, let's get to work on a proposal. The more backing we have, the harder it will be for Blake to dismiss us." As they exchanged ideas, the dynamic shifted from one of competition to collaboration. Their conversation blossomed into strategies and plans, igniting a sense of urgency and purpose. Each moment spent brainstorming fortified Jessica's resolve. Confirming this was more than just a campaign, it was her legacy. Yet somewhere in the back of her mind, a shadow of doubt lingered. Would Blake retaliate fiercely enough to divide them? Would he pull strings behind the scenes against her? She couldn't ignore the possibility. The ramping intensity of her aspirations blended with the looming threat of conflict. Jessica felt a tightening spiral of urgency. Every decision needed to be calculated, executed with precision. As she rallied her newfound team, determination eclipsed her fear. What awaited her suddenly seemed both exhilarating and perilous. The battle was escalating, and if she was to transcend her previous limits, she had to step into the storm head-on. As they drafted their proposal, adrenaline coursing through her veins, Jessica realized she'd need to confront Blake sooner than expected. She had a vision to fight for, and she knew the coming confrontation would determine not just her path but also the future of the company. The clock was ticking, and with each passing moment the stakes grew higher. Would she be able to convince Blake, or would her plan ignite an even fiercer conflict? Jessica squared her shoulders, ready to seize control. The next confrontation loomed large, and she could feel the heat rising. The morning light streamed through the blinds as Jessica prepared for her meeting with Blake. The glow felt foreign yet invigorating, as if the sun was whispering encouragement against the tension she could already feel building in her chest. She adjusted her blazer and took a moment to reflect. Was she really ready for this? The weight of her ambitions clashed with the uncertainty that loomed just behind her excitement. As she sat in the cafe on the ground floor waiting for Blake, she couldn't help but analyze her own leadership style. She had stepped boldly into her role, embracing her vision for a collaborative future. But would that be enough? Blake was not just her boss. He represented a more traditional way of thinking that saw transparency and openness as threats rather than assets. She needed to frame their conversation correctly, using data and emotion to fortify her stance. Blake arrived, his presence instantly imposing. She stood to greet him, masking her apprehension with a smile that felt less certain than usual. "Thanks for meeting with me, Blake," she began, her voice steady but cautious. "Jessica," he acknowledged, taking a seat across from her. "I got your proposal. It's ambitious." "Ambitious," she noted, resisting a gulp, "but entirely necessary. Our customers demand a deeper engagement, and I believe that with your support, we could create something groundbreaking." Blake folded his arms, an unconcealed expression of skepticism etched on his face. "Groundbreaking, you say? Or just risky beyond our tolerance?" Jessica inhaled sharply, determining that now was not the time to back down. "What's risky is staying in the past. Our competitors are positioning themselves to connect more deeply with their audiences. If we don't respond proactively, we risk losing market share." He raised an eyebrow, clearly intrigued yet skeptical. "And what exactly makes you think that this task force of yours will yield results? You've got your team excited, but excitement doesn't pay the bills." Inwardly, she cursed the slight tremor in her voice. This was her opportunity to not just defend her ideas, but to sell them. "With your finance team backing us, we can tie our initiatives directly to projected revenue growth. I've already got David's commitment, and I'm gathering insights from across departments. If we present a united front, it will be harder for anyone to overlook our potential." For a brief moment, silence enveloped them. Jessica could see the wheels turning in Blake's mind. She felt the urgency of that moment wash over her. She didn't just have a proposal. She was defending a vision. Her pulse quickened, and she pressed on. "Imagine if we can pioneer a new customer loyalty program built on genuine connections. We could redefine our brand identity." His gaze softened slightly, but she knew he remained unconvinced. "Jessica, strong ideas are great, but management is about measured risks. Our shareholders expect stability, not imaginative leaps." Jessica's resolve strengthened, nudged by the quiet encouragement of her newfound allies. "Stability doesn't come from denying progress. It comes from adapting to the market. This isn't just about me. It's about redefining what success means for our company. I believe together, under your leadership, we can shape a sustainable future." Blake leaned back, studying her with an intensity that diverted her thoughts from her defenses to her determination. What if he rejected her? What if he twisted her words and used them against her during the next corporate meet? Yet she had come too far to retreat now. The silence felt charged with possibility, pushing her to hold her ground. Each moment spent discussing their differences solidified her understanding of not just professional strategy, but her own values. This was no longer just about her ambition. It was about a genuine transformation for the company. "All right, let's test your idea," Blake finally conceded, the slightest hint of intrigue sparkling in his eyes. "Draft a clear plan with concrete metrics for success. I'll need to present your task force to the board." Relief washed over her, but a new pressure followed. The path ahead was clearer, yet the challenge was escalating. Would she be able to craft a plan that not only satisfied Blake but also secured the commitment of the entire company? The stakes had been raised, and as the coffee cooled between them, Jessica felt the buzz of urgency tighten in her chest. This was only the beginning, but the battle to prove herself and her vision had intensified. What path would she carve from this unexpected encounter? And what other challenges awaited as she prepared to face the board? She squared her shoulders once more, energizing her focus. The next phase was just around the corner, and the real test was about to begin. Jessica emerged from the boardroom, the weight of her ideas tangibly different than before. Gone was the blanket of doubt that had shrouded her nearly every moment in this corporate landscape. She felt assured, like a well-tuned instrument, discordantly loud amidst all the quiet tension that had once stifled her voice. Today had been a defining moment, not just in her professional life, but in her identity as a steadfast warrior for change. Gathering her notes, she reflected on the journey that had led her to this kitchen table moment. The ability to be both a caring mother and a formidable professional used to feel overly burdensome, but now it was interwoven into her very being. This duality had forged her resolve, shaping her plans and propelling her into a future devoid of restraint. Days passed as she diligently worked to create the proposal Blake demanded, her confidence morphing into laser-focused determination. The task force morphed from a mere idea into a structured initiative, reflecting her team's collective strengths in tangible, measurable goals. She began mapping out key performance indicators, engagement rates, customer satisfaction scores, and brand recognition metrics that would catapult their project into a spotlight of undeniable value. As she prepared for the next presentation to the board, there was a palpable difference in how her colleagues interacted with her. Enthusiasm replaced skepticism as they engaged in discussions, unfurling fresh ideas that blended seamlessly into her vision. Jessica wore this newfound camaraderie like armor. Each text message of support, every lunchtime brainstorming session fueled her momentum toward success. On the day of the presentation, Jessica entered the boardroom, the aura electric with anticipation. Her meticulously structured slides lined the projector screen, each a testament to the sincerity of their collective aim. An array of executives rumbled in, their faces unreadable, yet they had no choice but to acknowledge the work put in. Among them, Blake leaned back, arms crossed, but there was a flicker of respect behind his stoic facade that did not go unnoticed. "Thank you for gathering here today," she began, her voice steady but charged with fervor. "Our proposal is not merely a business plan, it represents a pivotal shift in how we can connect with our customers, enhancing both our brand and our profitability." Each slide she presented built upon previous arguments, fortified by data sourced directly from their consumer feedback initiative. As she showcased the testimonials that had surfaced, she felt a ripple of recognition wash over the room. Her colleagues began to lean forward, intrigued rather than defensive. "This isn't just theoretical. These are insights garnering traction in the marketplace," she emphasized, scanning faces of her peers who now mirrored her passion. "By implementing this task force and fostering a culture of consumer-driven innovation, we position ourselves not as competitors but as leaders in our industry." Blake remained silent until the crescendo of her presentation hit its peak. "What you're proposing isn't just risky, it's transformational," he finally interjected, catching her off guard. "I'm not opposed to change, Jessica, but you must realize that implementing these changes will take effort and, honestly, a leap of faith. Change isn't easy, Blake, but inactivity is an even greater risk," she replied, warmth brimming in her tone. What if we not only adapt but thrive? Our investors want results, and these strategies can ensure we get there. Each confidence-laden word danced through the atmosphere, revitalizing energy that only moments before had felt taut with apprehension. As nervous exchanges unfolded, one voice rang out among the executives, David from finance advocating for her vision. I endorse her position. The metrics are sound. It's time we take this step forward. Let's give the consumers a reason to reconnect with our brand. The surge of support cascaded like a wave, and Jessica felt her heart swell with triumph. The very essence of transformation she had painstakingly sought was nearing tangible calling. At that moment, Blake leaned forward, brow furrowed but eyes bright with newfound intrigue. If we're to do this, we'll need a timeline and key milestones, he said, flipping the script that had previously clung to his style of dominance. It was an unspoken validation of not only Jessica's capabilities but of the entire task force she championed. The meeting culminated with commitments and a signed agreement to execute the pilot. Excitement thrived around the conference table, a striking contrast to the tension that had festered not long ago. As the meeting adjourned, Jessica stepped outside into the sunlight, heat washing over her, carrying both the thrill of victory and the resolve to push forward. In the embrace of that warm glow, she found clarity about her future. This path was not solely manifesting growth for the company, but fundamentally reshaping her existence. Max would have a mother resilient in the face of adversity, someone who dared to dream beyond convention. Each decision taken, every word spoken from this moment forward, would be a defining chapter of the narrative she had forged. She had achieved the improbable and transformed from an undervalued employee into a respected leader, someone who dared to challenge convention while establishing her rightful place amidst a room full of skeptics. Jessica carried the satisfaction of having won not just a battle, but having claimed her identity, a triumphant culmination of hard work, belief, and relentless ambition. She had risen, conspicuously proud of what she had accomplished, but it was merely the beginning. And in the echo of her own voice, she realized it wasn't just her transformation at stake. It was a new legacy she was setting, one inspired by one incredible revelation. True leaders rise by lifting others. Make sure you subscribe immediately to the channel to not miss the next exclusive emotional stories. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm. Comment your reactions and theories about the ending. Share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. You need to subscribe now. This is the moment to show your support. Don't wait even one more second to share. True fans of personal overcoming stories understand the importance of supporting the channel through these actions.